3 phases that span 21 movies in 24 days? I can do it.
There was an idea called the Avengers Initiative.
You think you're the only superhero in the world? Mr. Stark, you become part of a bigger universe.
I am Iron Man.
We know each other. He's a friend from work.
Puny God.
I could do this all day.
Hello everybody, my name is Rye the Geek, and welcome to the first ever episode of the MCR, the Marvel Cinematic Review. Over the next 4 episodes of this podcast, I'm going to be doing a step-by-step review of the movies and the 3 main phases of the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. If you guys like the MCR, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and definitely share with your friends. And I'm serious, definitely tell me if you want me to do more than just these 4 initial episodes. Now, all that being said, let's finally get down to it. The first movie for the MCU was released on May 2nd, 2008, and that was Iron Man, directed by Jon Favreau, starring Robert Downey Jr. as the main character, Tony Stark. This movie really introduced us to the entire idea of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Marvel had made movies before, like Fantastic Four and Daredevil, several Punishers, and a handful of others. But being honest, they weren't that great. Nothing that stood out that made people really love the Marvel characters. Unlike DC, who had movies like Superman and some of the Batman movies, which were iconic at the time, Iron Man was the first for Marvel that did something just like that. Plot-wise for the MCU, Iron Man just started everything. It didn't introduce anything too crazy or insane, which will happen as we get into the later phases in phases like 2 and 3, but kept everything very, very centralized and about Tony Stark and his origin. And that was honestly about it. It was good. It's one of the most well-known movies for the MCU, but all it does, it's an origin story, and that's that. Later in 2008, on June 13th, the second movie for the MCU was released, The Incredible Hulk, starring Edward Norton. This was his only appearance in the MCU, sadly, and the only character that we kept in this movie was General Thunderbolt Ross, who we later see in movies like Civil War and others. Everybody else, including the main character Hulk or Bruce Banner, was recast, except, as I said, General Ross. Once again, just like Iron Man, this movie was a solo movie, basically just the origin story, kinda, of the Hulk, and doesn't do a lot to build the universe, except for one very important thing. The extra credit scene. The extra credit scene has become an MCU staple, if nothing else, where they show at the end of the movie, after all the credits, they show a little clip that may reference the next movie or just a funny gag. The extra credit scene for The Incredible Hulk has General Ross sitting in a bar, pretty drunk, angry that he hasn't caught the hero, the Hulk. Then who walks in? None other than Tony Stark. Yes, Robert Downey Jr. walks into the bar and starts talking to General Ross about a new superhero, or potentially new hardware for the army. But this is where we start to see that these movies are not just solo movies, they interact. We don't end up seeing another MCU movie until May 7th, 2010, and that movie was Iron Man 2, directed once again by Jon Favreau, starring Robert Downey Jr. again. This time we do see his partner, Rhodey, replaced by Don Cheadle to play the new War Machine character. It's been 2 years since the last movie for Marvel, and this is finally with Iron Man 2 where they start kicking off really producing movies 1 year right after the other, sometimes multiple per year. Iron Man 2 does a really good job of setting up this bigger universe. You're introduced to several characters in an entirely new organization, S.H.I.E.L.D. The new characters are Black Widow, played by Scarlett Johansson, and Nick Fury, played by Samuel L. Jackson. These characters in this organization are part of a government agency that wants to protect the world from superpowered people, to say the least. And they end up trying to employ Tony or Robert Downey Jr. into joining what is called the Avengers Initiative. And this is the first time we've ever heard about a team build-up growing for the MCU. And this really kicks off this big universe feel. The fourth movie in the MCU is Thor, which stars Chris Hemsworth as the God of Thunder. It came out May 6, 2011. Once again, this is another MCU movie that is basically just a solo film. We do get to see some other characters in it, though, like Hawkeye. This is his first appearance, the Archer that we have not seen yet. He works for S.H.I.E.L.D., and that's about it that combines the other movies. There's a couple other references, but not a whole lot. The one reoccurring character besides Chris Hemsworth Thor is Tom Hiddleston's Loki. We get to see the God of Mischief in the beginning of his crazy antics throughout the MCU in this movie, which makes a lot of people excited. Now, the fifth movie in the MCU, which is Captain America the First Avenger, does a lot to bring on the new, wider universe feel to everything, besides just calling it the First Avenger. Captain America the First Avenger came out July 22nd, 2011, starring another Chris, not surprisingly, Chris Evans as Captain America or Steve Rogers. Captain America does a good job of expanding the universe. We end up seeing what is called the Tesseract, or the Cosmic Cube as it's called in the comics, that is being passed around between an evil group of Nazis called Hydra, and they too are reoccurring villains that come back in the MCU, just like Loki was in Thor. We also get to meet Tony Stark's dad, Howard Stark, and we get to see the beginning of S.H.I.E.L.D. start to form with Sharon Carter and a few other important characters in this series. We also get to end the movie with a very, very important scene. It shows Steve Rogers waking up in the middle of New York, running out into the street and realizing that he's been asleep for 70 years. Yes, this movie takes place in World War II for the most part, and then at the end, for the end credit scene, we see Steve, or Captain America, wake up in what is today the present, and he ends up meeting Samuel L. Jackson's Nick Fury, and he starts talking about the Avengers Initiative. Both Hydra and the Tesseract will be very, very important as we continue on in the MCU series, but for now, they just disappear, so to speak. Finally, the last movie for Phase 1 of the MCU is Avengers, which came out May 4th, 2012. The Avengers brings together every hero that we've seen so far. Black Widow, Hawkeye, Iron Man, Thor, Hulk, and Captain America. They're all finally centralized in one movie. This is by far the biggest team up we had seen to date in almost any movie that we could name, especially in the superhero world. We have two very important things come back. First, we have the Cosmic Cube, or the Tesseract, from Captain America. And then we also have Loki, the villain from Thor, make a reappearance as the main villain for the Avengers. We learn in this movie that Loki is not doing this by his own accord. He's doing this for a much bigger presence. And this presence sets up what will become, throughout the rest of the other two phases, biggest villain that the Avengers have to face: Thanos. Besides meeting the MCU big villain, we also get to see Loki's staff, or scepter, which will also be a reoccurring object that's going to need to have some special attention too. And that's pretty much it for the Avengers. We're introduced to the MCU main villain, we're introduced to Loki's staff, we get to see the Cosmic Cube in present day, and we also see Loki once again. Not to mention all the Avengers finally in one movie. And all of that sums up Phase 1 for the MCU. We get to meet the main heroes, which are Thor, Iron Man, Captain America, Black Widow, and Hawkeye. We are also introduced to groups like S.H.I.E.L.D. and Hydra, and objects like the Cosmic Cube and Loki's scepter. We also get a brief appearance from the main MCU villain, which will be a recurring character for the rest of the two phases, Thanos. And that sums up Phase 1 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Thank you, everybody, for taking the time to listen to this. Be sure to comment and share this, and let me know if you want me to do more. There will be at least 3 more episodes coming out, but tell me what you think if you want me to do more reviews. Thanks, everybody. I'm Rye the Geek.
What have I to fear?
The Avengers.